On.
Hi, good morning everybody, and thank you for coming to our next workshop. So this one is on summer crops, and I have not printed my notes, but that's okay because I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, this year we redid our growers guide, so make sure you grab a new growers guide before you go today. They are free. They've got a little magnet on them so you can stick them to the fridge, and your kids will still steal it and you'll still lose it anyway. Or if you like me, so I don't know how many I've had on the fridge over the years. Summer crops here are a challenge. So obviously the rest of the country now, if you're on a gardening group, are all getting really excited. Is it too early to put my tomatoes in yet? I'm like, whatever, I don't care. Any of you who got to meet Josh last weekend, he was super jealous because we're eating tomatoes already, and obviously they haven't put theirs in yet. So he was pretty happy to be taste testing tomatoes everywhere we went last weekend. And so, yeah, so we have a lot of challenges here. So where the rest of the country are just starting to get into their summer crops, that's our winter crops. So my best advice to you is don't read packaging for seeds that say, yes, you can plant this variety of lettuce up here all year round. You cannot. If you're going to grow summer crops in this town, you have to get local knowledge and local advice and speak to people who are growing. And just, yeah, because I have so many people say to me, oh, but you know, the packet said I could grow it here. But it's sort of, if you have a look at the back of your packets, they sort of lob us in with subtropical Queensland. And it's just not the same. So make sure that whatever you're going to plant, this is your best friend, because this growers guide was done specifically for Port Hedland. So it is, you know, it is your better guide. So go buy this or ask on the Garden Club page, hey, can I plant this? Is it good or not? Because we're still in August, I've done this workshop a little bit earlier this year to sort of give you a bit of time to get your head around what you need to plant. So on the growers guide for August, it does sort of still say we can grow a lot of things. So if you're going to go away today and plant, absolutely most of these things will be still okay to plant. If this is about you getting ready to plant in a few weeks' time, I wouldn't even look at August, I'd be looking at September. And this time of year is really, really tricky, because anybody who's been here for a number of years will know that September could be beautiful or September could be horrible. So at this time of year, I like to gamble. I've got, you know, untold amounts of seeds, so I can gamble. If you are on a budget though, and the seeds you buy are the seeds that have to succeed, then I would be a little bit more conservative with what you're planting now. We absolutely can still grow plenty of things in Port Hedland over summer. It's just about, I guess, what I like to sort of say is changing your attitude on what your expectations are. You will not have lettuce, tomato and cucumber in January. If you're lucky, if you've got your tomatoes in and they're already fruiting, you may get them last until Christmas. On years where I've had good tomato crops, I'm usually eating the last of my fresh tomatoes sort of just around Christmas time. Unless you're at St. Cecilia's, and I don't think they're ever going to die. I think you're going to have yours a lot longer than that. So we'll see. I want to know when you rip the last of them out. I've actually got some seeds here for a cucumber called an Armenian cucumber that is meant to be a summer crops cucumber. The person I sort of was talking to them about it originally was like, oh no, I live in an area where it's 40 degrees and we get them here. So I've got some seeds. I did grow them a couple of seasons ago and I put them in January and I had fruit by April. So they did get through that hotter part of the year. So this year I'm going to trial planting them now and see if we can get them to sort of fruit in December, January. And if it fails, it fails. But if it succeeds and we can get cucumbers in December, January, that would be amazing. And they're a nice big white cucumber and they're really tasty. But I've got tons of that seed today. I've got some seeds here today for you to take. I've also had some plants donated that you can have some of, and these will grow fine now as well. I've got tons of radish. Radish are a really quick crop, so you could even still put radish in from seed for at least the next few weeks or month, depending on what September does. So gamble and chuck them in if you eat radish. But radish are a really quick crop, so if you get these in, they're only going to take a few weeks until you can pick them. So these will be a really good one if you're just starting out, to take some of these. And just a bit of a tip with radish. I know we want our produce to be big, but with radish, the bigger they get, the spicier they get. So if you don't like spicy, pick them when they're little, because by the time they're sort of a nice looking size, they'll blow your head off. And that's great if that's what you like. But yeah, so these are, you can take some of these home today. This was a little flowering plant called Nemophila. The lady who gave them to me said they probably won't do too well. But they require shade. So if you've got a nice shady spot, they're just a little flowering plant. They're not an edible. I was given some tomato seedlings. I personally don't recommend putting in little tomato seedlings in at this time of year, but they were donated, so if you want to give them a go, by all means. And then we've got some basil. So I haven't grown the purple basil before, but basil here grows all year round. If you're just wanting to dip a toe into summer crops and you're not sure, start with basil. Basil grows whether you water it or not. My son's garden bed, he did not water it for the entire summer last year, and he had one pop up and it literally only got what the elements gave it, and it was one of the best looking sweet basil plants I've ever seen. My basil at home gets retic, it gets a bit of love, and it's all dying off and isn't happy. It still is barely getting watered, and I have to go and pick his. So basil is really hardy, so if you want to start somewhere this year in summer, basil would be my number one tip. Don't buy it from the supermarket. Get it from one of the nurseries, because they will have it. They get it where it's raised outside, or get some seeds. Oh, don't pick that, please. You just see the whole plant coming out there. Sorry, I mean to scare him. He's holding onto this eggplant. He was pulling with all his might. Yeah, it's alright. He would have fallen back and hit his head too. Otherwise, especially with basil, get some hardened seeds. They're so easy to grow here. But if you get the hardened seeds, and what I mean by hardened seeds, like a lot of people, I use the term hardened seeds a lot, and a lot of people will say to me, oh, what do you mean by hardened seeds? So when we buy a packet, they're grown somewhere else. So the seed is produced quite often over in the East Coast. A lot of the seeds I get come from Melbourne. So they're grown in their conditions and their climate. And so when the seeds get here, they'll do all right. But if we seed save those seeds, they're now hardened to our conditions. And so I use a lot of hardened seed, and each year sort of they get more, I'm sorry. They get more acclimatized to our climate, our conditions, our soil, our weather. And you'll find that if you use hardened seeds, you will have earlier germination, you'll have stronger, healthier plants, and you should get crops of just that little bit longer. And if it means getting, that extra couple of zucchinis at the end of the season, or tomatoes for a few extra weeks, or your coriander doesn't bolt quite so fast, then you're getting more out of it. And obviously when you save your seed, you're getting them for free. You know that there's no chemicals on them, they're healthier. But yeah, that's what I mean by a hardened seed, is one that you've saved yourself from your conditions. I sometimes have people who message me that don't live in town anymore and say, oh, I can't get seeds, and I've moved back to Melbourne, can you send me some? Well, no, because something that lives beautifully here would probably go into shock in Melbourne, and wouldn't be as healthy. So where those seeds would be really strong here, taking them out of our microclimate and taking them to another completely different climate is the same way, it's just reversed. And there are some things, things like marigolds and stuff like that will probably be fine anywhere, but I wouldn't send your beautiful seeds to family over east, just because they're not going to grow as well as what they do here, because they're for our climate. It's really, really important. It's always really important to keep your soil healthy and to make sure that you mulch, but summer it's even more important, because obviously our heat just evaporates the water and sucks the moisture out. Whereas if you can put a really good layer of mulch on, that's going to help keep that moisture in the soil. And if you can keep your plants, your soil cooler, thank you. If you can keep your soil cooler and keep that moisture level more even, you're more likely to succeed with your summer crops. Now your pests will come in as soon as your crops start to stress out. Mealybugs, so the aphids will start to slow down, the caterpillars, thank goodness, will start to slow down shortly, but the mealybugs are going to come in. And the mealybugs will come and attack plants that aren't healthy or that are stressed out. So again, if you can keep your plants from stressing, you've got less chance of getting the mealybugs in and really setting in. If you're going to, say if you've already got winter crops in and you're going to now transition into summer crops, if you've got a pH tester, and I meant to bring mine today but kind of forgot, do a pH test and just see where your soil's at. If it's gone, so our soil here is alkaline, we sort of need to bring the pH down all the time. So even if you're not sure, if you can't get a pH tester, just know that you're high, you're alkaline, put in some gypsum. Do not use dolomite. Whenever you watch gardening shows or YouTube, they all talk about dolomite. Use dolomite lime, dolomite lime. Dolomite lime will raise the pH of your soil, and we want to lower ours. So to lower it, we use the gypsum. It costs like $10 or something, $8 from Home Hardware, and you get like a 10-kilo bag, so it's not expensive. You just chuck it on and give it a good water in, and that will help with your health of your plants, your health of your soil. If you've got compost, put some new compost down, chuck in some gypsum, give it a good water, and start again. My compost isn't ready, so I'm sort of probably just going to gypsum it, give it a bit of love, and then replant into it. But my soil here is really, really healthy already. But it's always good because I find that the heat here just rips through our organic matter. Like, you know, when you start your season, your soil looks beautiful and it's nice and dark and healthy, and by the end of the season, and I've even got it at home where the water's just running off, it's starting to become hydrophobic, all the nutrients have been ripped out, the sun just seems to eat the organic matter, and you sort of look and go, oh, it's kind of looking a bit red again. It's looking a bit more like Pindan than what it did at the start of the season. So yeah, you need to top it up so that you can start again. What else are we thinking? So yeah, make sure you've got your water up. At the moment, we're not using a lot of water, but as your plants start to dry out, if you've got repick, just slowly start to increase it a bit. If you're hand watering, you will need to go from once a day to twice a day. And yeah, and so then basically, so what I would get in here now, I've got a lot of what we call perennial crops here, and so your perennial crops are ones that will go right through the year. And we're really lucky here that a lot of crops that are only annuals, so are a one quick season only, are perennials here, and we can get a lot longer out of them. So things like eggplants for us grow all year round. So if you want a nice easy crop, if you eat eggplants are super expensive at the shops, but here they grow like crazy. Anybody that's just done a quick look around this morning will see that my eggplant plants here are loaded with fruit, and that will get more and more as the weather gets hotter. So that's probably one we can put in at Saints as well, is some eggplants, because you'll have plenty of people that will have those too. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different varieties of eggplants in, I think. Different shapes, different sizes, different colours. Do they taste different?
Sometimes it depends. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they grow really well. So summertime here we'll have heaps. And with your eggplants, they you'll sort of get to a point where you can see that they're not fruiting as much. I just cut them right back, and then they reshoot. And then because they've reshot, they're like, oh, I need to fruit. And they put off a ton more fruit again. So, and we'll continue. So the Japanese eggplant, the purple one that I've got behind the moringa tree there, that's probably 2 years old now, I reckon. I did have some in that bed there before they got stolen a couple of years ago. And when they were given to me, they were 4 years old, and I had them for a year. So they were at least 5 years old and still producing lots of fruit. So eggplant's one of those ones that This just keeps giving and you give all year round, whereas in over east, or I'm not sure even how far south, there is summer crop only because it's too cold for them in winter. So that's one thing we do really well here all year round. So it's a hardy one, that's a good one to get you started. Snake beans go most of the year, so I would still get your snake beans in now and you might get a quick crop out of them. Again, it depends on what September and then October do. If we go into a La Nina this year and it does stay cooler and wetter, then planting now is going to be a really good thing, because it's going to be this, that, you know, it's a couple of degrees makes all the difference with planting it in summer. You know, so if we do have that cooler, wetter summer, we're going to have some good crops. If it stays the way it has in other years, where like last year we had that really hot snap in September and we lost all our mangoes, you know, then you failed. But you don't know until it's too late whether it was going to be a good year to plant in summer. Things like, I've got Brazilian spinach over there that grows all year round and just doesn't die, and that's a ground cover. What I'm experimenting with at home this year, and I might do it here too, is what I call living mulch. So what I'm doing is I'm planting sweet potato. Sweet potato grows all year round. It absolutely loves it here in summer, but it's a ground cover. And it just constantly drops its leaves. And at the end of the season, when you dig up your sweet potato, your soil underneath is really healthy because it's been constantly fertilized by the dead leaves dropping off and breaking down into organic matter. So what I'm going to do this year, and I've already started it a little bit, is use sweet potato, pumpkin and watermelons. All three will grow all summer. You get your best watermelons here in March, so get watermelons in now. When it is stinking hot in March, if you're growing the candy red watermelon, you will pull out a 12-kilo watermelon in March. It's stinking hot, you don't want to talk to anybody, and you'll go out and you'll pick these massive watermelons. And they're really good because they take up a lot of space. I'm going to use them as living mulch, so I'm going to let them grow along the ground and actually keep the soil cool, because it'll keep the soil cooler, it'll keep it healthier, and then I can plant plants up it. So corn, in theory we can grow corn here all year round, but again it depends on that hot snap. Like I was saying Saturday night, Kelly Howlett, she grows amazing corn. When everybody else is saying it's too hot, Kelly's got this beautiful thing of corn in. But if we get a hot snap at the wrong time, it can just cook it. But in general, you'll get it most of the year. So getting corn in now is also good. We did some at Saints yesterday, so hopefully that'll, and they were hardened seeds, they weren't store-bought, so they have already done a season here. But what I'm going to do with my corn is I'm going to put in sweet potato around the bottom, and then that way you're going to get a double crop, because we're going to get a crop from underneath and a crop from up top, and then the sweet potato is going to help me keep that soil cooler. So that's something I'm going to be doing a lot of work with over summer this year, to see if I can, obviously, you know, hay's great, pea straw's great. You can get the free hay from out at Shoda, fantastic. If you can't, pea straw can be expensive. Whereas if you're going to grow watermelons, pumpkin and sweet potato, it's free and you're going to get a crop out of it. So it's sort of got that double purpose. And you know, it is a slow release fertilizer as well, because as your leaves fall, don't break them up and put them in the compost, leave them on the ground, and that will help, because it is just slowly going to add organic matter to your soil. What else have we got here? Beetroot. So beetroot, I would chuck a crop of beetroot in if you're going to get them in, you know, in the next week or so. Chuck them in. Look, your Asian greens, I would still have a gamble. Most Asian greens will bolt and go straight to seed as soon as it heats up. But if you can get some seedlings, or if you've got a shadier spot, you may get a couple of feeds out of it, but it will bolt pretty quickly. One of the good ones with Asian greens is, as it's too hot to do your choy sum, your bok choy, is when the kangkong takes off. So
yeah, mine's growing.
Is a Chinese water spinach, and in winter it sort of goes dormant and doesn't do much. But the second it's too hot for all your other Asian greens, it just goes berserk. And it's another one that you can use as a ground cover, as a living mulch. It puts off a pretty white flower, and it will grow all summer. And the more you cut it back, the faster it'll grow. So that's where, like I say, it's just about changing your attitude. So in your stir fry, you can't have choy sum, bok choy, pak choy, but we can have a ton of kangkong. I wouldn't do broccoli or cabbage. Capsicums, not too bad. If you can get capsicum seedlings, I'd chuck them in. You may get a couple of capsicums off it before it gets too hot. The capsicum plant, if you look after it though, will survive the summer, and then you'll get it fruiting. You'll have a nice, healthy, big capsicum plant, and then next year, as soon as it cools down, it'll fruit and you'll get them earlier.
Can they go into a pot?
Yes, as long as your pot's big enough.
Okay.
Yep. Chilies are an all year round thing. I personally struggle with growing chilies, although I'm doing okay with it this year. But the majority of people in this town that can grow chilies will have thousands of them over summer. You're laughing, yes. Yeah, you can't give them away, can you?
No.
Yeah. So chilies are a good summer crop as well. Don't even bother with coriander; it's already gone to seed. It's a coolest part of the year only crop. Corn, I would get it in now. Cucumbers, if you grab some of the Armenian cucumber seeds, we can give that a try. The daikon radish is pretty good almost all year round. I planted them in January last year and we got a really good crop out of them. I did try and plant some late last year and I think there was nothing left for the caterpillars to get into, so they ate those. So I think if I could have kept the caterpillars out, they would have been fine. Eggplants, as I said, grow all year. Egyptian spinach is a really good one. It doesn't do that well here in winter, but in summer, I've never planted Egyptian spinach. It's come here from when the original coordinator who set this garden up planted it 5 years ago. And so the seeds are just everywhere here, and as soon as the weather heats up, it just pops up everywhere. And then as soon as the weather starts to break, these plants just fall over, drop their seeds everywhere, and they lie dormant all winter again. I generally don't have a lot of seed of it because the seeds are tiny and the pods crack open and just spread everywhere. But once the weather heats up, I will have tons of seedlings and we'll be able to dig them up. But the Egyptian spinach is really good to eat in salads. You can eat it raw. And it's actually quite nice. It's got that little bit of slime at the end, but not too much. But you can cook it in stir fries, soups, or I just like to eat it raw. Garlic chives are pretty good. If you like garlic chives, I'd chuck them in. I sort of get my garlic chives to last for years. I know one of the committee members, Sam, he's got those really big, thick, like the Chinese chives. And I think he gets his all year round. I've not had success with those, but the garlic chives, they do beautifully pretty much all year round. I've got them in my aquaponics. And I don't seem to be able to kill it. Even the mint can't kill it. Italian parsley, I would get it in. We had a bit of a look at the parsley just before, and I've got one that survived all summer last year, so it's now about a year and a half old, and is still producing quite well. I've never been able to keep it through summer before that, but this time I did, but it was completely covered with other vegetables, other plants. So I think if you can keep it in the shade, so parsley's a good one to grow in a pot, so that in winter you can have it out in the sun, and then in summer you can put it away in the shade. Because it's a leafy green, they do okay in the shade. Kangkong we've been through. I wouldn't put kohlrabi in there, or brassica. I wouldn't put any of the brassicas in now. If you've got kale in, you can get kale to survive a fair way, but I wouldn't put it in yet. I wouldn't put it in now. Lemongrass isn't all year round. Lemongrass actually does better in summer. So in winter it goes dormant, but in summer it absolutely takes off. That's when its growing season is. So lemongrass I would get in now if you can get some. Lettuce, nope. Loofah, absolutely. Loofah grows here all year round. It will produce less in summer, but your plant will still grow, and you'll get a couple of loofahs off it. But the second the weather cools down, it just explodes. So that's another one that you can have growing through summer, and then know that you'll get an early crop off it as soon as the weather cools next year. So okra is another one that grows all year round. If you eat okra, I've got some seeds here today. Okra grows really fast in summer. Okra you need to pick every 2 days.
Yeah.
every day, every second day. Otherwise, it just gets out of hand and they're no good. I like to eat okra raw. It's a bit slimy, but for me, I like the crunch and the flavour of raw okra when they're sort of about this big. But most people will use them in curries and soups and stir fries. And then that sort of cooking it will get rid of the slime. But I've only really had it a little bit cooked. I usually just nibble on them raw. Pumpkins, I like pumpkins through summer. If you can keep the water up to them, they're fine, and they'll grow out, and again they'll be a nice living mulch. And they're just a big bulky spot of green as well, so when everything else is dead, your pumpkin will just run. And the good thing about your pumpkin and your watermelon is that you only need to improve the soil where you actually plant it, so you don't have to have a big 10 square meters of healthy soil, because it's only got a small area for its root system. So if you want to grow something that's going to give you a big impact for less work, just work on a small patch and put your pumpkin seeds in there or your watermelon seeds in there, and then just let them run, and you get a big bang for your buck. So,
Do they need full sun?
no, not in summer. So the grandma pumpkins that I grew over summer this year that I pretty much didn't even water, it was getting water over the fence from my neighbour's place. That was in mostly shade, and I think that's probably what helped it survive with little water. Pumpkin, watermelons will grow in full sun, or probably a bit of shade as well. What else have we got? So radish, I would get your radishes in now. They're a quick crop. They can be ready in 4 to 6 weeks. So even if September does get hot, you probably get a quick crop out of it now anyway. Rocket, I'd probably still get some rocket in. You probably get a quick crop out of that too if you eat rocket. Silver beet, if you can get some silver beet as seedlings, I'd probably still get it in now. I had some last year in that garden bed there, and it survived for 18 months before somebody ripped it out because they didn't know that it was a plant. But I'd had it in for 1.5 years. It lasted all through summer. If you can keep the caterpillars off it, it'll be fine. I had mine last year, looked beautiful, and then I let my chickens out, and the next day the whole crop was gone. Spring onions are another one that'll grow all year round. Do not grow spring onions from seed. A couple of years ago, grew spring onions from seed, and it took a whole year for them to be ready to harvest. Whereas if you go to shops, you buy your spring onions, you cut the bottom off, like that, so they make it about that much, and stick it in. Within a few days, it's ready to harvest. Whereas with the homegrown ones, it took me a whole year. I cut them off, they were literally ready again 48 hours later. So I will never grow spring onions from seed again. Just wait till they're on special at Coles for 99 cents a bunch and buy those, and they will go all summer long.
So you just cut the bottom off?
Yep, so your root system, and then maybe about that much, so it's probably about 2 inches long
Yeah.
all up. Chuck them in, beautiful.
Okay.
And you
what
keep
else?
cutting them out at length.
Yes, yep. And they'll just keep growing all summer. And the whole thing's cost you 99 cents and you've used it already. And this is your waste that you would chuck out.
Yeah.
Sweet potato, fantastic, grows all year round. Again, you just get some runners from somebody, and you just bury them and let them go. So I've got mine sort of dotted throughout the garden, and I want them to, as I'm pulling out my other crops, it'll take over, and then hopefully it'll keep my soil nice and healthy. What have we got? Tomatoes, I personally wouldn't put tomatoes in now, because as soon as they'll grow, they'll look fine. They'll even flower, but once it gets consistently too hot, the fruit just won't set anymore. Watermelons we've been through. Zucchinis, like I said, zucchini, I would gamble if you're going to put them in this week. And you may get a few, you may not. This time of year is just really frustrating. It just depends on what September does. Right, I'm trying to look around and see if there's anything in the garden that I can use. Your bananas will be fine through summer, your fruit trees will be fine. I've got my first fruit on my pawpaw there. which is really exciting because I've never grown them before. My citrus is flowering, so it's just about keeping your water up, keeping your nutrition in. The cassava grows all year round. That's a root crop, so that looks beautiful. You stick it in and it takes about a year until you harvest it. But yeah, it survives through just about anything as well. What else have I got in? The New Guinea bean. I'm going to try and plant some now. So that really enormous thing on the fence that everybody keeps looking at, they've gone to seed now. So we'll harvest those next week when I've got a group in doing some seed saving. I am going to experiment this year and see how they go through summer. Has anybody grown them through summer before? I think I've tried and failed, but I'm going to try again this year. Obviously the mangoes, they're going to go through summer. We should hopefully get some good fruit this year. And I think that's about it. Is there any questions?
I don't think so.
Alrighty.
I can't see
Okay,
anything.
well we're going to log off. Thank you for joining in and we'll see you again another day.